Hey guys, for the little opening act today, I thought I'd talk about some lessons I learned from the Rubik's Cube. I know you're hearing all this nonsense and so forth. I apologize. I'll stop messing with it. Um, so, just on a lark, and because some other YouTubers that I liked kind of made the case for it, I decided to learn to solve a Rubik's Cube, which I can totally do if I weren't concentrating on helping you right now. Helping, talking to you. You see, I can't even concentrate. So, here's the deal. Rubik's Cube is really interesting. Um, let me start with how many possible orientations there are of the Rubik's Cube. How many combinations there are? There are 43 quintillion possible um, organizations, combinations. There we go, combinations. There are 43 quintillion possible combinations. That's 43 with 18 zeros behind it. Now, to give you some context, 43 quintillion seconds ago, we were in the Paleolithic age. All right. 43 quintillion is not infinite by any stretch, but to my small, simple mind, it's essentially saying there's an infinite number of possible combinations. If you were to do one combination every second, it would take you over 31,000 years to get all the combinations. All right. So that means that if you're just turning this thing around at random, you will never solve it in your lifetime. You'll just never solve it. Even if you do one combination, one move every second, in your lifetime, that's only a handful of seconds. It would take you 31,000 years of one move a second to figure out how to solve it. So it's impossible, right? Okay, so there's the first piece of data, 43 quintillion combinations. Here's the second one. No matter how mixed up this cube is, it is only 20 moves away from being solved. Now, you have to be a computer and know all the things and so on and so forth, but the point is, no matter how messed up it is never more than 20 moves away from being solved. So now we've gone from 43 quintillion possible combinations to just 20 moves away from being solved. All right, here's the third piece of data. The world record for solving one of these things is like 3.47 seconds, less than 3.5 seconds. 3.5 seconds to solve one of these. So now we've gone from 43 quintillion, which for all intents and purposes says it's impossible, to only 20 moves away to you can do it in 3.5 seconds. And even me, as just a moron doing these at home, it takes me a couple minutes. And it's a couple of minutes while watching TV and having a conversation with my wife. Okay? In other words, you don't really need to pay attention. You just follow some moves, you follow some algorithms, and you solve it. All right, so what does all of this mean? Well, it means a few things. First of all, it means there's always a solution. There's always a solution, something I've talked about in the past. And furthermore, no matter how insanely complicated or impossible something looks, once you know how to do it, it's easy. Everything is easy. Everything is easy. Now, I know that's an extreme statement, but bear with me a moment. What's something that you're really good at doing? Were you always really good at doing it? What's something that is easy to you? Well, it wasn't always easy to you, but now it's so easy to you that you've probably kind of forgotten when it was complicated or difficult. It's called the curse of knowledge. We just assume that everything that comes naturally to me must obviously come naturally to you, and it really doesn't take a whole lot of effort. This is why sometimes teachers or parents get frustrated with their students or kids, because it's like, how hard can this be? Come on, all you have to do is carry the one, bring over the zero, put out, and the student is like, what the hell, right? But once you know the solution, everything's easy, and there's always a solution. And so these are kind of lessons I take in my life. No matter how impossible it looks, there's always a solution, and once you know the solution, everything is easy. That's it, right? So I've applied this to a few other things. Now, imagine for a moment that it's let's say that you're like me, you're 55 years old. I know you're not 55, but bear with me, right? Let's say you're 55 years old. Oh, it's too late for me to do anything and become great at it and so on and so forth. I'm too old. Okay, think about this. Let's think musicians for a moment. How many 22-year-old musicians are out there just killing it? Now, I don't know how old Billie Eilish is, but she is killing it. There's a bunch of other musicians who I really like. I don't know their age, but they're kids, and they are killing it. Now, is it because it's natural talent? Well, sure, there's some talent there, but that's not what it is. What it is these 22-year-olds decided when they were 12-year-olds that they loved music. And from the age of 12 on, and I'm just choosing these ages arbitrarily, but you get my point. From 12 on, they just lived, breathed music, right? And they were really into music, and they played music, and they did it for fun, and they did it at concerts and competitions, and their parents took them around, so on and so forth, right? In other words, when we see a 22-year-old musician just killing it, or an artist, or an actor, or a performer, or an employee, or a CEO who's uber young, we just see this young kid and we think, boy, you just had talent dropped on you, huh? No, we don't see the decade and a half of work that they put into becoming an overnight success. It took them 15 years, 10 years to become an overnight success, right? So, I'm 55 years old. Too late for me, right? No. If I really get into something, if I really enjoy it, say video or cinematography or anything, right? 10, 15 years from now, I could be hot stuff, and I would only be 65, okay? Let's say 10 years. I'd only be 65. Well, at the age of 65, I've still got 20, 25, 30 years of my life in front of me. So if I'm really good at something at 65 and I continue doing it until I'm 80, 85, I'm killing it for 2 decades. So no matter how complicated or something, impossible something looks, there's always a solution. Once you know the solution, it's easy, and with practice and time, you can become awesome at it, and it's never too late because you're going to be here 10 years from now anyway. You might as well be awesome at something. All right? Okay, so there we go. Just a thought of the day. Let's get started. Okay, so yeah, I really enjoy. I'm a introspective sort of thinker, and I really enjoy all the thinking about these ideas and so forth, and applying them to my life. So every once in a while, it's fun to share those. So all right, fantastic. So it looks like we're getting folks on board. That's great. It's going to be a relatively short lecture today. We're just going to do some things from the reading, all right? So if you haven't done the reading yet, I'm going to pretty much take care of you on it. But still, we'll get to explore the ideas. Now, when I say relatively short, oh, hold on, I need to reset these from our previous lecture. There we go. Is America capitalist? Misspelled. Thank you very much, Lon. Or socialist? All right. Well, okay, I admit it's a little bit of clickbait. We're capitalist. But are we? Well, yeah, but we're going to explore this. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at it through the eyes of, I got the wrong pointer. There we go. David Potter. He wrote an essay called The American Economic System, where he really kind of explored the American economic system. And he kind of asserts that America has its own particular brand of capitalism. And he asks the question, what drives this particular brand of capitalism? And that's what we get to explore today. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to throw this up here. Quora, it's a website where you get questions answered and so on and so forth. I'm going to ask you this question. Now, why do childless homeowners pay school tax? We don't use the school system, and so we should pay less or nothing at all. Now, by the way, a quick thing about homeowner tax, property tax. And this matters in this lecture, all right? Property tax is the only tax you pay even if you own the property outright, okay? So, I own this. I don't have to pay taxes on it anymore. I own this. I don't have to pay taxes on it anymore. I own this. Yeah, I solved it when, we were watching that show. I don't have to pay taxes on it anymore. But my home, I have to pay taxes on it in perpetuity. In fact, if you own land and don't even have a home on it, you still have to pay property taxes. This is the only thing that you have to continue to pay property or taxes on. Now, before you say, well, what about car registration? It's different, okay? When you own your car, you don't have to pay taxes on the car. You do have to pay registration for the right to drive that car on public roads. But if you don't drive your car on public roads, you don't have to pay registration. But if you don't live in your home, it doesn't matter. You have to pay taxes. So let's do this. We're going to start off with our question thingamajigger right off the bat. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and add some points for you guys who have chimed in. Adrian is already in there. Why do we pay property taxes even if you don't, for schools, even if you don't have kids? All right, let's play with that idea. Okay, excellent job. Excellent job, as always. By the way, so we're going to go ahead 1, 2, 3, 4, because we had some other ones there earlier talking about, just chatting about bands and so forth. And then we've got some contributors going on. That is fantastic. And some references to other points. Very good. We're going to get up there in no time flat. Let's go ahead and play with some of these. Okay. Most of them are in agreement with one another, but let's still explore them. So Adrian came in first because kids are going to go to school. They're going to affect the economy. People live in this economy. We're all an interconnected society. So this is absolutely correct, right? One of the reasons, and I've shared this with you, but I'm going to share it again. One of the reasons I enjoy teaching, and I feel that it's important and in my best interest to teach, is in 15 years, I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire from my full-time job in 15 years. Which means it is in my best interest that I retire in a thriving, happy economy, driven by happy, thriving people. And coincidentally, you folks are going to be at your peak earning age in 15 years. I know you're different ages, I get that, but the majority of you are going to be at your peak earning age in 15 years. Therefore, if I want to retire in a world where people are happy, thriving, fulfilled, and earning well and contributing to the economy, I want to help make that happen. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to these taxes, right? So Damien said education will affect society entirely by contributing those taxes. Even when you don't have kids, you can contribute to the development of your city or place where you live. Yes, and in fact, the reason we do this is it is an investment. We talked about investment a fair amount in these lectures, that an investment is any time that you pay a little bit of money now, but get greater return later. Well, I got news for you. Let's say that right now, I'm just going to make up a number. You're earning $25,000 a year. I'm just making up a number. At $25,000 a year, your tax base is pretty low. You don't pay a lot in taxes. But now, if we can get you up to $130,000 a year, you are going to be paying taxes out of your nose, but you won't mind because you're earning $130,000 a year, right? So I'm actually going to get a lot of return off of my tax dollar by funding your education, because you're going to pay more taxes later as a result. Scott, because everybody must contribute to the greater good. We're going to talk about ethics later in this course, and the greater good or utilitarianism is one that we're going to discuss. Laura, we pay for school because it helps our society as a whole. All kids need an education. Getting that education affects how our state or country does in the future. Amen, sister. I completely agree. Now, Dylan, and I don't know if I marked it. I'm going to mark another contributor with Dylan. I'm not sure if I got you there, Dylan. You point out redistribution of wealth. That is absolutely something we are going to be talking about in a fair amount of depth over the next few lectures when we come back from our break, right? It is a redistribution of wealth, and a redistribution of wealth is a socialist mechanism, okay? And Laura's on, there. And then Alma says, because we need to help, education with kids. They'll Alma, I said it before, you said it then. I should have just waited and cited you, because they're going to pay taxes in the future, right? And Mauricio, yeah, it's totally part of our infrastructure. It is what makes this country strong, okay? So absolutely. All of this being said, and by the way, I saw Mauricio in there as well, and that was 2 more comments. it is still a redistribution of wealth. And redistribution of wealth is associated with socialism. The idea of socialism is that the community at large recognizes that there are some things that the community needs and that everybody needs to contribute to the extent possible. And those who can contribute more should contribute more. And schools being paid for by property taxes is just one example that we'll explore. Okay? So, yeah, wrong one. Let's come back over here. So the point is, if this were a pure 100% capitalist society, we would not have property taxes. And it would not go as a redistribution to educate somebody else's kids. But we know better. You know better. By the way, 60%, as I've mentioned, of your education is funded by taxes. Okay. So here's what David says, and I really like kind of the way he spells this out. He says, listen, when it comes to America, the goals of the economy have been set by democratic philosophy rather than the theory of capitalism. He says, yeah, I know what the theory of capitalism is, and you guys know what the theory of capitalism is. We watched a cartoon that taught us what the theory of capitalism is, and we explored the different ideas that came in through time, ownership of capital and investment and profit motive and laissez-faire. You guys get this. But David says, David Potter, he says, it doesn't really matter. We're actually more interested in democratic philosophy than we are in true theory. So let's explore what he means here. All right, we're going to read through here. The fact that the masters of capital have never been in really full control means that they have never been able to set the goals of the American economy. The masters of capital, meaning the bigwigs, the folks with cigars, the 1%, the 1%ers. That's who we would, not just, the guy in Monopoly with the monocle and the cigar and the top hat. The 1%ers. They've never been in control because we don't really care about their theories. Instead, and this is the second major economic corollary of the democratic commitment, the goals of the economy have been set by the democratic philosophy rather than the theory of capitalism. Let's see that play out. Historically, what have the American people expected of their economy? They've not cared very much for the maximum efficiency, which is what the theorists of free competition are constantly talking about. So, capitalism is all about maximum efficiency. The invisible hand, which you guys know about now, the invisible hand says that, resources will always be used to their maximum efficiency because the profit motive. You don't want to spend more than you have to. You don't want to spend more than you have to. And neither does anybody else. Therefore, we will always try to be as efficient as possible with our resources. That's capitalism. But he's saying, Americans really don't care. We don't care about maximum efficiency, right? In fact, they have tolerated immense waste in the use of natural resources. They have not sought the elimination of inefficient or marginal producers, which again is one of the presumed merits of free competition, but have often gone to the aid of marginal producers, especially in agriculture. Okay, let's break this down a little bit. Hey, so what happens when somebody in there type, have you heard the term too big to fail? Too big to fail. Have you heard the term too big to fail before? I'm curious if you understand what that statement often infers. Okay, just do me a favor, if you've heard it and you understand it, jump on in there. Yeah, Scott, many times. Scott's an old fart like I am, so of course you've heard it, Scott, right? Because we've lived through a lot of it. I'm just messing with you. Adrian's heard it. Yes, you guys know this. So I'm going to, just because you guys are chiming in and you're there, let's just do it, baby. Let's do it. Our timestamp, 10:16. Took you guys no time at all to get there, right? So after the lecture, 10:16. All right. Now, Adam hasn't heard it, but understands what it means. Yes. So here's the idea with too big to fail. Back when I was a kid, don't worry, we'll get to modern times. We'll get to modern times, right? But when I was a kid, Chrysler was always going bankrupt. Chrysler was always going bankrupt. Well, we couldn't let Chrysler go out of business because it employs too many people. And then, of course, the invisible hand points out that, all the neighborhoods to support those employees in that company, you can't let them go. And they, of course, support with the military and so forth. So the government is going to step in to make sure that the auto manufacturers do not fail, because we can't afford to let all those jobs disappear. Adrian says if a company is entirely too big, in no way it can fail, because government or a big power won't let it fail because it will hurt the economy. Bingo, right? United Airlines after 9/11, absolutely, right? And recently, a decade or so ago, it was, or 2 decades ago, it was the savings and loans. Okay, we had a savings and loan crisis and recession. And then it became the housing market, and we were bailing out the housing market. And now we're bailing out all other companies and so forth, and we will be because of COVID. The point is, if a company in pure capitalism, if a company fails, it fails. Survival of the fittest, baby, laissez-faire. You can't hack it, you fail, you're out. But gosh, there's all those jobs and people and support systems and contributors to the economy and all the supply chains. If we let this company go, it'll be awful. That's socialism. Okay. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm saying that's where every once in a while our lawmakers have to take a big gulp and say, we have to bail out this industry, or otherwise we're screwed. And by the way, they're right. Okay. Now, notice here that David Potter says, especially in agriculture. What he's talking about with agriculture is agricultural subsidies. In the United States, we heavily subsidize agriculture, dairy and ranching, especially agriculture though, but dairy as well. Now, we don't subsidize them as much as we used to, but we still subsidize them a great deal. So now in 2005, in terms of billions of dollars, corn was $7.5 billion. Then we subsidized cotton, soybeans, wheat, tobacco, dairy, rice, and peanuts. Okay. Now, what does subsidizing mean? Well, at its simplest form, which means that if there's anybody out there who actually knows what they're talking about, you're going to be able to shoot all kinds of holes in what I say. But in its simplest form, it says this. If you go to the grocery store right now, not right now, we're talking, don't go right now. Later on, go to the grocery store, find your cheapest loaf of bread. How much is the cheapest loaf of bread there? It's about 88 cents, 90 cents. Okay. How much was the cheapest loaf of bread 10 years ago? It was about 90 cents. How much was the cheapest loaf of bread about 20 years ago when I was poor and so forth? Or no, actually, 30 years ago. It was about 70 cents. In other words, your cheapest loaf of bread, the price is pretty consistent. Same with milk. Milk, the price is pretty consistent. Now, why is that? Why isn't it fluctuating and so on and so forth? Well, that's because we subsidize. We do a couple things. Let's say that the market, let's talk corn. All right. By the way, the reason that corn and feed is so high is because, first of all, you and I eat corn. Second is cows eat corn feed. And third, corn is often made into ethanol, which is used in fuel. So we really subsidize the bejesus out of corn. Let's say that the market falls, right? And there's a horrible disease and drought, and the corn production is, let's just say, 20% of what it normally is. Well, now, the law of supply and demand with 20% of what it was says that the price of corn is going to go way up. It's going to go way up because normally we're used to having 100% of this corn available. Now we've only got 20%, which means feed prices will go up, which means beef prices will go up, which means tortilla shells are going to go up, which means fuel is going to go up. It's going to ruin our economy. So the government comes in and says, listen, dear corn farmer, I'll tell you what. You sell it for the same price you've always sold it. Sell it for the same price you've always sold it. And we will pay the difference. So yeah, okay, there's not much corn available. You could sell it for $100 a bushel. Don't sell it for $100 a bushel. Sell it for $20 a bushel like you always have, and we will pay you the other $80. Okay? So that's subsidies. By the way, they also do the reverse. Let's say they have a gangbuster year and everybody has corn on the market. They have 200 times the amount of corn they normally do. That means prices would plummet because nobody needs that much corn, right? The government will step in and say, hey, we'll take care of the rest. We'll buy the rest of the corn off of you. We'll put it in silos or whatever. We'll just make sure that you're taken care of. That is what we do with agriculture. We do it with all kinds of things. Agriculture and dairy and all kinds of prices. All kinds of prices. I'll give you another example. One more example and then we'll move on, I promise. Hey, you took a shower this morning. I'm guessing you took. I don't know. Maybe you haven't. If you're taking this class from home, you might be like, dude, I'm still in my pajamas. Let's say you took a shower. How much did it cost? Truth is, you don't know how much it cost because the water is so cheap that you just don't care. I mean, you're paying for the water and you're just literally bathing in it and letting it flow all over the place and squirting it everywhere. And you have no idea how much it costs. The reason you have no idea is because it's so freaking cheap. Same with electricity. There's all kinds of things that the government has kind of decided we want to make available and affordable to everyone. Okay. And that goes against the tenets of capitalism. Let's continue looking. If we look not at the theory, but to the experience, we may find that the only economic policy that the American people have always insisted upon and consistently applied is the system should operate in such a way as to give the bulk of the population access to sources of wealth. This is paramount. Okay? Give the bulk of the population access to sources of wealth. If there's any rule in capitalism, again, you want to stay away from axioms and dogma because not everything is so blatant, right? But a rule that I tend to subscribe to is it takes money to make money. You cannot get ahead unless you have access to wealth. And it's just that simple. So if you do not have a decent income, if you do not have the ability to take out loans, if you do not have a low tax rate and all this stuff, if you do not have access to wealth, you will not succeed. Now, yes, I know there are some people who just like are totally networked, but then that's access to wealth and support through another mechanism. What the government has said is we want to make sure everybody has access to wealth and to wealth building engines, because it's through access to wealth that we can all grow, right? So how do we do this? We do this in a ton of ways, right? First of all, property taxes. Now, the reason we tax property and nothing else in perpetuity is because land is a wealth building engine. Okay? You can build wealth with land. And therefore, and yes, you can own the land, but there's a finite amount of land and everybody should benefit from being in the United States where we have this land. Therefore, we expect you to build wealth with this land. And we're going to tax you so that we can then make wealth, the wealth of that land, available to everybody in some small form. So children in my neighborhood are going to get a free education, K through 12, because I own my home and I am building wealth with my home. And yes, I am building wealth with my home. You know, prices go up and all that. Well, what if you say, well, I have land, but I don't have a home on it. I don't have a factory on it, right? McDonald's, yes, right, Adrian? I don't have anything on the land. The land is vacant. Why should I pay taxes? Because I'm not building wealth on it. Because you should be. The fact that you own that land means that that opportunity to build wealth on it is taken away from other people. And the fact that you haven't started monetizing that land yet, that's your own decision. But we want you to monetize the land, says the government. And so we're going to tax you anyway. So you might as well monetize it and help grow the economy, right? So you see how that works. You see how that works. By the way, Mauricio, totally agree. Got my car when the pandemic hit. Got amazing rate, no interest. Yes. Yeah, because the government wanted to make wealth so stinking available. My son is a loan officer, so he helps line up home loans and so forth. And during this last year, interest rates were like way low. Why were they so low? Because the government wanted you and me to have cheap, easy access to wealth, because that's what builds wealth. That's what builds an economy. So that's what David Potter is talking about here, right? Which means a certain degree of socialism. Because, well, if I own the wealth, why should I share it? You should share it because it's going to make the economy better for everybody. Deal with it. All right, let's keep going. Let's see what else he has to say. One of these is the goal of maximum opportunity for the individual arising from the strong American belief in dignity and worth of man. Okay, maximum opportunity for the individual. In the United States, we believe strongly, the United States in aggregate believes strongly, you may not, I may not, but speaking in aggregate, the United States believes strongly in the power of the individual. I came to this country with nothing more than the coat on my back and $27 in my pocket, and I had nothing, and lo and behold, look at what I've built, okay? We love those stories. We really like stories in the United States of the little person with nothing becoming the great person with everything, okay? That is not going to happen without access to wealth. That is not going to happen without access to wealth. Therefore, in order to make this dream of the maximum opportunity for the individual come true, we need access to wealth. And that demonstrates our sense of dignity and worth in work, which comes from the Protestant work ethic. Remember? All of a sudden, work is a moral obligation. It has dignity. It establishes our place in the community. Therefore, we want everybody working, and we want everybody moving up in the economy, and therefore that takes access to wealth. One more. The other side of the goal is a high and steadily improving standard of living, arising from the fact that American society began with its major growth at a moment in history when, for the first time since the beginning of the world, the productive system was capable of yielding a steadily increasing surplus above the bare necessities. Okay, what's he saying? Well, it all comes down to this. High and steadily improving standard of living. America has this mindset that every generation should surpass the previous generation. Now, I'm not saying that we've always done it, and I'm not saying that we all believe it, but as an ethos in America, there's this sense that you should surpass your parents' generation. And your parents surpassed their parents' generation, and so on and so forth. And as David Potter points out here, America really came to fruition around the Industrial Revolution, which meant that America has never been a subsistence country. Many countries that have been around for centuries and centuries, the vast majority of their history was we're just trying to get by, man. We're just trying to survive. We are a subsistence culture, right? We're just trying to muddle through. America has had a surplus from just about the beginning of time. Well, beginning of our nation's history. We've had a surplus from just about the beginning of our nation's history, and we have always expected that surplus to go up. And this is something that we feel that we need to invest in as a country to make sure that everybody has a job, everybody is doing well, everybody is growing, everybody is exceeding the previous generation, which again has put in place a lot of, policies and practices that are on the face of things a socialist practice. Okay. Oh, wrong one. No. Okay. Come back over here, Lon. Okay, now here. Now, I want to talk about one thing, but I'm not going to go into depth on this because there are other authors and readings that we're going to explore that are going to talk about this in a lot more depth. But David Potter does kind of point out the role of advertising in all of this. Perhaps the most convincing proof of the extent to which American standards have soared above the physical necessities is not statistical at all, but lies in the fact that Americans no longer buy most of their purchases in response to actual physical need. Need has been transcended as an economic stimulus, and goods are bought for comfort, convenience, recreation, style, and prestige. We are going to explore this in depth going forward. But the point is, we have it pretty darn good, and we like it that way, and we ensure that our economic system allows us to have it pretty darn good. By the way, Damien says, I think there is more weight to it. Japan's culture puts so much pressure on our younger generations that they are the country with the highest suicide rate in the world. Yeah, because they fail, right? It's really true and really sad. And by the way, Utah doesn't have a super great record in terms of suicide with our youth right now. So if you have any thoughts or inclination that way, get help. Get help. You are not a failure at all. All right? Look at my little pre thing, right? You can do it. All right, my opening act. All right, guys. I'm going to leave you with one quote from Martin Luther King Jr. Capitalism does not permit an even flow of economic resources. With this system, a small privileged few are rich beyond conscience, and almost all others are doomed to be poor at some level. That's the way the system works. And since we know the system will not change the rules, we are going to have to change the system. This is what it really comes down to when it comes to conservatism and progressives, right? Is we have a hybrid system. We do have some elements of socialism which redistributes wealth to meet the needs of those lower in the social rung so they can work their way up. The progressives would like to do more of this. The conservatives would like to do less of this. It is a healthy debate to have. Unfortunately, I feel like we are no longer having that debate. We are now talking about whether or not QAnon is right or wrong. Oh my holy hell. If we could just stay focused on the debate of conservative versus progressive and where do we apply these practices and where do we don't, we could be so much better off. But we've gotten ourselves distracted by, I don't even want to say shiny objects, by crappy objects. But I agree with what Martin Luther King Jr. says here, is that capitalism in its purest form does not take care of the economy as a whole. It only takes care of those at the top. It takes a form of governance that looks after the needs of everybody to raise the entire economy. And that's what we try to do here in the United States. Not saying we always hit it right, but we try. Okay? And so, folks, there you go. That is it for today. Like I said, a fairly short one. And furthermore, we're not going to be together again for another week or so because for those of you that are in my class, you've got a spring break next week. Now, you have a spring break when it comes to school. You probably don't have one when it comes to work, so bittersweet, right? But use the time well. I do not assign anything during spring break. I want you to enjoy that time. So enjoy, recharge, and we will see you all when we come on back. All right? Have a great week and a great break. We'll see you later.